Hello everyone, and welcome to Journey to Success Radio, a show featuring people and companies who are making a positive contribution to the world. This show will help you learn how to apply success principles in every area of your life, so that you can make the most out of your skills and talents and accomplish more of your goals. To find out more about the show, please visit www.journeytosuccessradio.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Journey to Success Radio. My name is Kelly Russell. I am a mentee of Tom Too Tall Cunningham's. And today we have with us Dr. John W. Stanko. Dr. Stanko was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and attended Duquesne University, where he received his bachelor's and master's degrees in economics in 1972 and 1974, respectively. Since then, John has served as an administrator, teacher, consultant, author, and pastor in his professional career. He holds a second master's degree in pastoral ministries and earned his doctorate in pastoral ministries from Liberty Theological Seminary in Houston, Texas in 1995. In 2011, he completed a second doctor of ministry degree at the Reformed Presbyterian Theological Seminary in Pittsburgh. John has taught extensively on the topics of time management, life purpose, and organization, and has conducted leadership and purpose training sessions throughout the United States and in 32 countries. John founded a personal and leadership development company called Purpose Quest in 2001, and today travels the world to speak, consult, and inspire leaders and people everywhere. From 2001 to 2008, he spent 6 months a year in Africa and still enjoys visiting and working on that continent while teaching for Geneva College's Master of Organizational Leadership and the Center for Urban Biblical Ministry in his hometown of Pittsburgh, PA. John has been married for 41 years to Catherine, Simone Stanko, and they have 2 adult children. In 2009, John was appointed the administrative pastor for discipleship at Allegheny Center Alliance Church on the north side of Pittsburgh, where he served for 5 years. Most recently, John founded Urban Press, a publishing service designed to tell stories of the city, from the city, and to the city. Dr. Stanko, do we have you with us this morning?
We do, Kelly. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here this morning.
Oh, thank you for the time, sir. I appreciate that. There's some things I want to get back into your bio that I would really like to expand on later on. But I just want to get this interview started with something that also caught my mind. The name of your company is Purpose Quest.
Yes.
Tell us about it and how the name came about.
Sure. I started becoming intrigued with life purpose in 1981. I was in a business opportunity that failed, and so it caused me to ask some very pointed questions of why I was here and what I was supposed to do. I wasn't quite sure I would even find any answers, but I did. I felt like I had identified back then a purpose statement that had pretty much defined my life up to that point and has defined it since, and that was to create order out of chaos. I never had to go looking for chaos, Kelly. It always seemed to come looking for me. And so I kind of toyed with that and mulled it over for a number of years. In 1991, about 10 years later, I had an opportunity to, I was traveling with a church music company helping organize seminars. And so they asked me if there was anything I could teach over the weekend. And not being a musician, I said, well, I have these messages on productivity and purpose, and they said, well, let's experiment with those. And it was 1991 I started teaching on finding your life's purpose, and the response was so overwhelming, I thought I'd do it maybe a few times, and I've done it in excess of 1,000 times since then, and as you mentioned, in many countries. And so, again, about 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, looking to do a website and, looking through what was even back then available. Purpose.com was gone. So it just occurred to me that we were all on a quest to find purpose, and so I named the website and consequently the organization Purpose Quest, one word with a capital Q, to help with branding and to make it distinctive. And boy, it's stuck ever since, and it's grown in its clarity and importance for me and for other people. And so we're all on the purpose quest, and I think that one word or that one phrase summarizes it. I'm not sure we ever arrive, but the quest brings us so much more clarity, helps us stop doing things that we aren't supposed to do, weren't created to do, and helps us keep focused on what it is that we should be doing. And so that's kind of a synopsis of the purpose quest story.
I like that whole thing with purpose quest and finding your purpose, because that is so true. No matter what you're doing in life, it's like, what is my purpose? What am I here? God, help me figure out what am I here to do? And I think we all encounter that in our lives at one point or another. And also take out there how you were involved in a business opportunity, it failed, and you took some time to think about, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to take from this failure and turn it into a success that most people have to do in life? And it's one of those things where you can either let that failure define you and have it keep you down, or you can learn from that failure, continue on to a new journey, and build upon that. And I like how you took that failure and turned it into something new. You mentioned in your I'm sorry, you were about to say something else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. In your bio, even during your talk about Purpose Quest, you talk about how you do a lot of work in Africa. Talk about what you do there and how it got started.
Well, I first went to Africa in 1993, and let me preface it by saying when I found my purpose, or when I discovered creating order out of chaos, I just had this sense that one day that was going to take me to the continent of Africa. Had no idea how that was going to work out. 1993, working for the music company, they sent me to South Africa for the first time to meet with somebody who they wanted to partner with. He had written some music and he had some educational programs, and so as soon as I landed in Johannesburg, I had this sense that this would be a place I would be coming back to again and again. And sure enough, that's what happened. I went back the next year in preparation for a tour I was going to be doing with the music group, and visited all over South Africa, and then went up to Zimbabwe, and that opened more doors. And we eventually did do that tour, but that was the last thing I did with that company. And so, but as I finished up that tour, a church in Zimbabwe asked if I would come help them structure some things. That was 97, and so I did, and then they asked me to come back, and then they had me come back, and then in 2001 I went through I don't want to say a midlife crisis, but at the age of 51, made a transition out of a world that I had been in for a couple of decades. And when that ended, I found myself starting all over again in many ways professionally. And the only ones that were calling, the only place I was getting phone calls was from Africa. And so I like to say God makes it very clear. We may not like what he's showing us, but for me it was I was supposed to spend more time in Africa. So I started going for 2 weeks at a time, but really couldn't do any business. And you know, then people would say, how long are you here for? I'd say 2 weeks. If you were here next month, you know, I'd have you do a retreat. I'd have you come talk to our staff. So I started going back for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, because every time I went, there were just more and more opportunities. And Kelly, was really interesting that I never would have thought that Africa would have paid its own way. You know, my stereotypical thinking was that I was going to need donors or business over here to help me do business in Africa, but that was not the case. Africa really began to support me full time, and I would work for banks and nonprofit agencies and churches, and they would pay their own way, pay my way over, and pay me fees for consulting and team building. And so it just kept growing and growing and growing. And so even though I transitioned out of going as often as I once did in 2009, I maintain some pretty firm contacts, specifically now in the nation of Kenya. I take a group there every year because I like to connect them with what's going on in Africa, and I just really, the added benefit is, for some reason, I seem to attract a very racially diverse group. So I have some people who have never been out of the country, some African Americans, some white folks, some go back with me every year, and just have a chance to connect the people who go with me to the needs that are there, the opportunities that are there, and many have fashioned and shaped their own work in Africa or Kenya based on the times that they have gone with me. And interestingly enough, another surprise, one was the financial piece, the second one was the purpose piece, and that I found Africans to be really in tune with and very hungry for teaching on purpose. And it kind of intrigued me, Kelly, because some of the conditions were such that they were eking out an existence, and I thought, they're going to be consumed with just getting by. But the thing I found was that the less control people had over certain parts of their life, the more they wanted purpose, because it was something they could control. It was theirs. If it was to plant vegetables and sell them, they could do that. It didn't matter if the government was cooperative, uncooperative. If theirs was to fix broken things, they could do that. And so I was really surprised and pleased that the message found such receptivity and fertile ground in Africa. Now some of my books are published in Kenya and in Nigeria, so that keeps me very much in front of the people. And so I joke with the audiences there and here that I spend a lot of time in Africa. I am an American, and that makes me an African American. And the audiences just howl with laughter, because obviously I'm as white as a cumulus cloud, and so it's just been a great experience, and one that I hope I can continue for as long as I have strength.
Right, and we are all people of the world and children of God, and there's so much that you just talked about in that story. I just took a few notes. Thinking about how God makes things possible for us and shows us the way. And you talked about how you had hit the midlife crisis and didn't know what was going to happen, but this other door opened, and you made another opportunity out of that. And something you had said that made me think about a Les Brown story I had listened to in regards to him speaking and him saying, Lord, this is not for me. Find somebody else. But God kept pushing him along and pushing him along. Yeah. And you see the man he has become today. And another note I took for that, Africa, being a blessing to others, and how people were down there wanting a purpose. Yeah. That they could control something. Like you said, that the circumstances in their scenario might not be the best. Right. They were still hungry for something that they wanted to control and have a purpose
very much.
For something. So that is very beneficial. You talked about books, and you've written quite a number of books. How did you get started as a writer? And tell us about some of the books you've written.
Well, one of the things I ask people when I'm talking to them about purpose is, what did you used to do when you were small that perhaps you grew out of, that you don't do anymore, but it may hold clues to something you're supposed to do today? Well, one of my favorite activities on a rainy day, and you're too young to remember typewriters, but I had a toy typewriter, and it actually it had a red and a black ribbon, and so I would take magazines and other things, and I would type the articles that were in there and produce pages and stack them up next to my little typewriter and feel like I was achieving something. And so I always found myself to be a pretty good writer, pretty efficient writer, but never did much with it till I was 45. Kept talking about one day I was going to write a book, and just had this this question in my mind one morning: when is that one day going to be? I'm acting like I've got all the time and all the years in the world. So I had taught a seminar. One of my first seminars with purpose was called "Life is a Gold Mine. Can You Dig It?" And it was 5 topics of purpose, goal setting, time management, organization, and faith, and I called those the Goldmine Principles. And, I was teaching some of it in the seminars with the music company. I had invitations to do seminars in other settings, and so I decided to take that, and as I taught it, to record it, had someone transcribe it, and when they gave it back to me, I had like a 100-page manuscript. It wasn't very good. There were a lot of unfinished sentences, and I went off on tangents regularly, but at least I had something. So I worked to edit that, to put it in some kind of format, and linked up with a publisher in Alabama where I was living at the time called Evergreen Press. They were just starting, and so Life is a Goldmine in 1995 became their first project and my first project, and we've since revised it once. And if your listeners are doing the math, that was 1995. That's 20 years ago. So we're looking to release a 20th anniversary edition later this year to commemorate that first book. And then, I had a goal to write one a year, and I met that in most years. And now it's with the ease of publishing and my son working with me in the Urban Press publishing entity. I'm taking things that I've written and publishing them even more. So right now I have 22 books that are out there. I've got plans for 3 more this year, but I don't want to stop there. I want to help other people, help them do their own creative projects, because I've always been a fast writer, and I've gotten even quicker and faster. So I'm interviewing people and transcribing their interviews and then editing the manuscripts or giving it back to them to do, because I know the joys of holding a finished project, whether it's poetry or a script or a book, the joy of holding it in your hands. So I want to keep enjoying that myself, but I also want to provide that opportunity for as many other people as possible. And, for me, that's just part of my leadership philosophy of servant leadership, which is defined as serving other people's highest priority needs. So if someone's highest priority is to express the creativity that they have not found a way to do, then if I can help them do that, then leadership, service behooves me to find a way to help them, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, there's so much to take out of what you just said. One, I want to say, I do remember typewriters. I say I'm a 70s baby, but I'm an 80s kid.
Okay.
So I do remember typewriters.
All right.
And I like how you talked about life is a gold. Your one book title, Life is a Gold Mine. Can you dig it?
Yeah.
I had to write that down because that is so true. Like, life is a gold mine. Can you dig it, and what can you learn from what you dig out of it?
Yeah, let me just interject. Sometimes I read that sometimes to get an ounce of gold, they have to go through a ton of ore. And so and when we look, and the gold is invisible to the eye. You got to mine it, but then at other times you can hit the mother lode, the main vein, and so the digging can pay off, and you find great riches, And that's one of the reasons I think, Kelly, why more people don't know their purpose is they got to dig. There's no formula. It's you've got to be in touch with your heart. It certainly helps if you're faith-based, if you believe that God is capable of revealing His will for your life. But it's still, we've got to wade through our how we were raised, some of our bad thinking, some of the things we learned that we have to unlearn about our capabilities, our esteem. And so life really is a gold mine, and I think it's more relevant than ever, the question, can you dig it? Can you pay the price? Can you do what is necessary to bring your purpose quest to some measure of conclusion, that being identifying what your purpose is and then taking steps to be productive with it?
I want to sidetrack here for a second.
Sure.
You brought up purpose real quick. How do you work with individuals who somewhat need some more molding and shaping to help bring their purpose out? Like you can see there's potential there, but they I don't necessarily want to say they need a kicking a butt, but they just need something to help inspire them to take them to that next level. How do you work with individuals like that?
Well, first I try to start with their personality. I do a very basic DISC profile with them, just to what I call, Kelly, prime the pump, get them used to talking about who they are, who they're not, giving me more information to understand how they approach life, how they approach details, how they approach new opportunities, and then I just wade in. I start to ask them questions. I have a And let me just say, when I started in 91, people would they would just so resonate with purpose. And some people would weep, and people would want to talk to me, and I was so excited. And then I'd say, what do you think your purpose is? And they'd say, I have no idea. And, so I started to look around for materials that I could recommend to them. And most of the materials, for lack of a better term, just beg the question. What is my purpose is the question, and the question is you have it. You have. Well, what is it? Well, you have it. And let me show you another way that lets me know that you have it. But it wasn't helping people. So I tried to develop resources that to equip people to ask better questions. And so that, because even in faith-based, I would tell people, they would say, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I would say, that is so nice. That is so special. And that it's absolutely meaningless because you're not asking a question. You're making a statement and you're putting it in God's lap, so to speak. You better show me what it is because I have no responsibility in this. So I say, no, you do. So the better statement is, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. What is it? Now you're searching for information. You're in tune now with messages that can come to you from other people, from your life experience. And so when after I get to know the people a little bit, then we start asking questions, like my writing experience. What did you do as a child? What's always given you joy? What do you do in your off time? If you had all the money in the world and money wasn't an issue, what would you do? What have people complimented you about over your lifetime that you've heard repeatedly, but because it's so second nature to you, you really look right past it and you don't think it's very special. And so I just try to, because it's interesting, Kelly, people will come to me and say, I have no idea what my purpose is. I say, really? I said, no idea. They said, none whatsoever. And sometimes they'll cry and be frustrated. I said, so you have no idea? None. I said, okay, let me ask you some questions. Would you like to drive an 18-wheeler? They say, no. I said, would you want to be an astronaut? They say, no. I said, would you want to be a tax attorney? No. I said, now, for you to be that definite and say no, you have some idea. Because if you had no idea, you would have to say maybe, because all the possibilities would be on the table. But the fact that you can say no to certain things lets me know you have a general idea. Let's get more specific. So I bore in, and for some it's not that simple because they're not comfortable talking about themselves. They are overwhelmed with perfectionism. They want not just the best answer, the best intergalactic answer that's ever existed in the history of mankind. And but if they keep at it, we will at least come up with some generalizations. I work well with children. Okay, what kind of children? Well, it's funny you ask. It seems like the ones between 8 and 11, or the ones with special needs, or little girls, or little boys, or coaching Little League, or coaching soccer. But because that revelation, that insight wasn't accompanied with lightning or with a handwritten message from God, people tend to look past it and consequently have fallen victim to the career trap, where they asked the questions, where will there be jobs? So they go to, college, and they read a study that says there'll be 600,000 jobs in physical therapy over the next 10 years. So they go into physical therapy, even though they hate science. They don't want to, be that involved with people. but because they could get a job, they went in that direction and consequently come to me 10, 15 years later because they are adrift at sea because they're not attached to what their passion is, what their interest is. And let me just say one thing, and I'll turn it back over to you, but I'm trying to get people to recognize their joy. And it's interesting to me, Kelly, how people are paranoid. They don't trust their joy. So I said, what's your joy? Oh, I love to paint. Well, why don't you paint? Well, can't make a living from paint. I didn't say whether you can make a living. Why don't you paint? And it gets into this whole, they dismissed it. It was childish. They couldn't make a living. It won't pay their health care. So they cut themselves off from their joy, and they go do something that they're not that interested in doing, and then they wonder why they go through depression or health problems because they've cut themselves off from who they are. So I guess in some ways, and I'll close just by saying I'm trying to reconnect people, or connect people with who they are. And for some, it's that life is a gold mine. They got to go through a ton of ore to get to the mother lode. And for some, they may not even believe there is a mother lode. And so, everybody's coming at different levels, different stages, and therefore try to fashion my coaching according to where they think they are.
Right. And once again, there's so much to take out of what you said, and especially I think when you talked about the people, the example was I like to paint or I work with children. And the one thing is at times we get caught up in life, and people have that fear, that false evidence appearing real. In particular, I always say, that, I might enjoy painting, but, painting doesn't pay the bills.
Yep.
Or, I enjoy working with kids or being a teacher, but, it doesn't, once again, it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't help provide the lifestyle that they may be accustomed to or that they want to live. Yep. So it happens to a lot of people that we settle for something that can help us get through life as opposed to giving us or going with that passion and joy that helps us enjoy life.
It gets us, instead of going through life, we need to find out how to get to life. And most people are cut off from the life because they're cut off from their joy. And the joy, why would God create us, Kelly, and put something in us to enjoy it and then not allow us to do it? The joy is there to simplify the process, to help us understand. There are some. I was looking at some pictures of Mount Everest this morning, and I'm trying to think, why would anybody climb that? But for some people, it gives them great joy. Now, whatever that is, it may be the challenge, it may be the rarefied atmosphere, it may be the teamwork with other people, it may be the view that they get to the top. I don't have to understand it. I don't even have to share in it. I just have to help people recognize that if that's what they have, then they got to climb as many Everests as possible while I'm writing books, because my books give me my joy, but the outdoors give them, or whatever we would summarize their reason for mountain climbing to be, that gives them their joy. And I think we almost have a moral obligation to pursue it and to give people around us permission to do the same.
Right, and I might reference Les Brown a lot, but that's because he's one of the people I listen to on a daily basis. And one of the things I was listening to him the other day was talking about the person's at work, and they're like, "I'm going," and the other person they're talking to, "But why are you going? You've got a good job." He's like, "You've got benefits. You've got A, B, C, and D." He's like, "I'm going for me.
Yeah,
I'm not happy here, and I've got to go for me. Do what I want to do."
Yeah,
that's a lot of what I take out of there, and also. I like how you talked about, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. What is it? And I also took out the handwritten message from God. I'm sure you probably heard the story before where a gentleman is, there's flooding.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing of, God, send me a sign. I know you'll save me. And they end up sending like a rowboat, a helicopter, a paddle boat or something like that. And unfortunately, the person dies and goes to heaven. And it was like, God, I wanted you to save me. What happened? He's like, I sent you a rowboat, a paddle boat, and a helicopter. What more do you want me to do?
Right.
Right. It's just about, can we catch that sign that God is giving us? Says, this is their passion. Go out and do it, and I'll make a way for you. And
I think the joy is the sign. It's simplistic. There are other things, But most people are afraid of it. And, of course, when you and I met, we talked a lot about creativity and fear, the role that it plays in keeping people from being creative. Fear also keeps people from finding purpose. And very often then they hear me talk like this, so immediately they exaggerate. They say, so you want me to quit my job? Because now they can dismiss, well, this is totally bizarre. I could never do that. Therefore, I can't do my purpose. And I said, that's not what I said. You're the one drawing that conclusion. You don't have to quit your job. But right now, and I tell people this, and people look at me like, how did you know? I say, you're going home. You have no energy. You are bored. And so therefore you sit and watch, you channel flip, or you eat, or you go to bed early, or you watch a movie you've seen 15 times before because you have no purpose once you get out of work. So what I try to do is establish a program for people. If you're a poet, okay, now when you get your purpose starts at 5:01. And let's talk about what kind of poetry and how many poems and how are we going to publish them? What are we going to do with them? And, of course, then that gets closer than some people would really want to get because, yeah, they're going to work. I mean, their free time, whatever that terminology means, is going to have to be invested in what gives them joy so they can get their strength back, their energy back to face some of the other things that have been stealing their joy and see where it all leads. So, I've had people, they'll say, I like to watch television. Well, let's take a course in video. Let's take a course in community television. There's lots of jobs that are involved with. Let's look at animation. But well, I don't know if I want to do any of that. So, in many ways, then we settle for working for an institution that in part will take care of some of our needs, and we trade off our joy needs for our just daily bread needs, and it's a real conflict for a lot of people.
Right, and something when you were talking about the whole video aspect, just a real quick side note. I was listening to a local radio station here in Pittsburgh, and I can't remember what the topic was, but some guy called into the station, and it was on the fan. It was a sports station, of course. So the guy said his son was going to end up, when he got older, he wanted to make money off of YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is it. This is like, because there's certain channels where if you can drive enough traffic to that channel, you get paid off that. And the kid already, teenage kid, already had an idea. This is what he wanted to do. And you saying all that about the art just brought me back to that example of the kid and him wanting to know the purpose that he likes sports and he wants to make some videos around this and draw traffic. And it just goes to show how much time has changed now.
Yeah. There's
time and technology.
Which you're right, Kelly, but it's actually complicated purpose because in a proliferation of things that you can do, it makes the question, what is it that I should do, for some people all the more difficult. And it was a lot easier when Grandpa was a shoemaker because, the oldest son was going to be a shoemaker or they were going to be farmers. But now that there are so many opportunities, it paralyzes people, and very often they're still in the mindset that I need a company, I need an organization to help me do what I was created to do. Now, in many cases that's true. I'm certainly not demeaning, UPMC. I mean, that provides so many opportunities for healthcare workers, professionals of other disciplines to express who they are. But at the same time, there's never been a better day that you don't need an organization, that you can start your own organization. Well, now that gets into a whole nother level of fears, a whole nother level of creativity, and no thank you, I'll take a tip from my company to be unhappy as opposed to stepping out to embrace my joy and see over a period of time how I can structure a life that will enable me to express that joy more often than I am doing now. And so this can get pretty deep. I mean, it's the purpose message is it's a very revealing message in that it turns us inside out and causes us to have to face our fears, our dreams, our joys. It requires a lot of self-awareness. It's interesting when some people, when they come to me, Kelly, and I will make the statement, it's obvious you're bored. The look on their face is like I've slapped them, but they never thought of it. Because every day is presenting its challenges. It's how are we going to get it done? How are we going to respond to this customer? But for the most part, there's no big challenge left. They understand their work, and they're bored. And so consequently, this drive for leisure, I got to go out on my boat because I am so distraught from boredom, so lacking in stimulation that I got to go to the casino, and maybe hopefully he'll hear those bells ring that somebody's hitting the jackpot. Even if I don't hit the jackpot, at least if I can be around somebody who is. Because my life is pretty much, I know tomorrow is going to be like today. And so I ask people, in the pursuit of purpose, when's the last time life took your breath away? That you did something you didn't think you could do, or you faced a challenge and you didn't know how the next day was. You were on the line. And when's the last time that happened? And for some, it's been all too long ago, and so I just try to connect them back to some situations, and even not necessarily at work, but outside of work, they can take their breath away. They can just, wow, and not have that be rappelling off a building or bungee jumping, but in the course of purpose, questing, purpose fulfilling in normal life situations. So it's been a pretty interesting journey.
Man, once again, I had another example that you were talking about how people that hold with the gambling, or I think you may have mentioned earlier smoking or eating, how they don't find joy in what they're doing, so they find joy in other things. Some of those things can be dangerous to people.
Yeah.
It's like an outlet.
Yeah. Somebody said, take pro football. Pro football is a sport played by 22 men in desperate need of rest, watched by 70,000 people in desperate need of exercise. And that's how purpose can be. I mean, we flock to hear Tony Robbins or some speaker to vicariously get a smidgen of their joy. But so I've had people say, well, I said, who are your models? Who are your role models? Who would you like to be like? And I could never be like Oprah. I could never be like Tony Robbins. I said, well, right there, you're defeating yourself. You don't have to be like them. You just have to be like yourself. But you may, in being like yourself, you may have to do some of the things that they do. Mm-hmm. And it may not make you $1 million, but it'll sure make you happier than you are now. So, there's a lot to this, and it's I never thought, Kelly, when I started in '91, that 24 years later I'd still be doing this, and that I thought the purpose message was going to serve me, but I serve it and continue to be a steward of the insight that I believe God has given me, and passionate to find ways to touch as many people as possible. And consequently, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity on the show to do that, to talk to people about purpose and creativity and fear and all those things that I've come to see and know so clearly over the last couple of decades.
No, I thank you. Just to let the audience know, Dr. Stanko is another individual. If you heard me do these interviews before, you will hear me rant and rave about the Duquesne University Leadership Breakfast Series. And unfortunately, it came to an end. But Dr. Stanko was the last speaker there, and I enjoyed his talk immensely. And just sidetrack. And once this is all done, I'm going to the picture you had us draw. Dr. Stanko had us draw a picture that talked about our life. And he wanted volunteers to speak, and I was like, I'll do it. And for my picture, I drew Superman. I told people who know me, I love superheroes. I have no fault in saying that. I don't know if I showed you or had a chance to tell you, my wedding ring actually has the Superman S logo on it. And I even showed I like how you laugh. People see that, and they're really intrigued when they see that, like, your wife let you do that? Yes, yes, she did. And I love her for that, on that note alone, that she let me have that. Yeah. And I drew the picture of Superman. I'm holding the world. And as Superman, you have a bunch of problems that you have to deal with. And then I said, who does Superman call when he needs help? And I put out the bat signal. Yeah. And I counted the bat signal as my accountability partner, my wife, and my best friend, who at times can all come in and help me out. There's my best friend. He ironically lives in Houston, Texas. He survived the floods, thank God. I got an accountability partner here in Pittsburgh, and, of course, my wife as well. So when I need help, who does Superman call when he needs help? Batman.
Yeah, he calls another superhero. He doesn't call some schlep. He calls somebody who's doing something with his life. And too often, I think we surrender the control of who's going to help fashion us and shape us to people who haven't done anything. And so consequently, we listen to their opinions. Oh, be careful. We don't want you to be disappointed. We don't want you to bite off more than you can chew. So, and then we think, well, I'll do that in 20 years. I'll do that when the kids are grown. I'll do that when my mortgage is paid. I'll do that when I retire. But heck, I've been a pastor too long to realize the old die and the young can die. And I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. This is the day that the Lord has made. And so consequently, I try to encourage people, don't tell me you're going to write poetry in 10 years. Don't tell me you're going to write a screenplay in 10. Let's start it now. And I've had a fair measure of success. And so go be Superman, Kelly. Go be Superman.
Up and away. And it's so true how you said, do it now. Do it today. I remember at your talk, that's one of the things I got the most. Go do it now. Go do it today. You already know what it is that you want to do inside of you.
That's
all
right.
It is you're just afraid.
Yeah.
We all have that fear, some of that false evidence appearing real, some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I've also heard a lot of people say, leap and grow your wings on the way down. Is it going to be difficult? Yes. Yeah. Is it going to be rough? Yes. But on the other side of fear is success. Yeah. I've heard way too many people say that. Yeah. And I know we've got a little sidetracked here, but I want to bring it back in here. You talked a lot about creativity coaching. How did that begin specifically?
Well, again, it started with my own purpose message. My own purpose statement. I used to say, Kelly, that I made order out of chaos. My purpose is to make order out of chaos, and I think it was about 2005. I was in Zimbabwe, and I was driving myself, and then I just had this experience, this thought that I don't make order, I create order. That the emphasis I've put on making and order and chaos, that I needed to put more emphasis on creativity. And that I would always say, Kelly, I'm not that creative. I'm a good administrator and I can solve your problems. But when I started to reflect on what I felt or sensed that morning, I really did begin to see how creative I was. I played the violin growing up. I've been known as being pretty humorous, so my sense of humor, I at that point had started 2 companies. I was well into writing. How could I say I wasn't creative? And so it changed my whole approach, my whole view of who I was. And so and at this point in my life, when I get something, I believe I'm supposed to write about it or start teaching other people. So the audiences that I had, I immediately started to engage this topic of creativity and found people in the same boat. And so then I started developed a little seminar on creativity, and that's where I got the idea to draw a picture, and I explained how it came out of my own experience where I was asked to draw a picture, and you'd have thought they asked me to parachute behind enemy lines and fight a war. Draw a picture? I don't draw pictures, and I can't draw. And I just started to face if I'm so fearful around that, where else am I fearful? And so I started teaching, and at the same time, I'm always really concerned, Kelly, that I don't teach beyond, not so much beyond where I am, but that I'm not addressing the things that I'm teaching in my own life. Because Jesus said to the Pharisees, you'll put burdens on men's backs and you won't lift a finger to help them. And so consequently, you make them twice the son of hell that you are. And I said, I don't want to be putting burdens on people, like find your purpose, and not equip them to find it, or be creative, and not give them the tools and resources that at least I know of to help them embrace and express that creativity. So that's been the last 10 years. It's been an unexpected byproduct of the purpose message, but it sure has been a lot of fun. And now that I'm getting freer and freer as I get older and older, that's where my goal used to be to write one book a year, because I didn't believe I could do any more. This year my goal is to write 6, and or at least produce 6 and edit, along with helping. An email just came in from somebody in Dallas, Texas, who I'm helping them write their story of how they started a business and how they've used that business to work with and help the poor and the needy all over the world. So it's once I took the fear wrap off, and once I embraced the fact that I wasn't creative, my life radically changed, even in my mid-50s.
Nothing's wrong with that. Reinvention.
Oh, my. Constant. Ongoing. Purpose quest. It's part of the quest.
Right. And you mentioned how you teach at an undergraduate and graduate level. What trends are you seeing in leadership training these days?
Well, more and more training and less leadership. And let me explain. I see a proliferation. In fact, I leave when we're doing this interview. I leave tomorrow to help a school down in Oklahoma start a leadership degree. But the thing I told them is, if you're going to start this degree, this is not like accounting. This is not like sociology. If you want to start one of those degrees, you can set up a department. But leadership, people are going to hold your institution accountable for the kind of leaders you are. This has to be pervasive. And so I see lots of training, lots of writing, yet I see the pressures of economics causing companies to more and more employ leaders who are not team players. They will pay mouth service to team, but they got to get results. And if they don't get results, they're out. And if they do get results, they're going to make a lot of money. So while we rail against authoritarianism and the need for more inclusivity, too often when people get the chance to lead and they have not developed a leadership philosophy, they will become as authoritarian or more so than the people that they took over for. And so I'm concerned. I think we have a crisis in leadership. I think we have lots of good examples at grassroots level, but they don't have a lot of power. And I'm concerned that the people who hold the power, who can make significant changes in culture and in direction, the cost, the risk of doing so is so great that very often they opt not to do it. And I tell my students in leadership, you will be tested, because they're in the classroom and this is the kind of leader I want to be. But when the bottom line's not there and you've said you want to be value people and build on their strengths, and the board says we don't give a rip about somebody's strengths, get the bottom line better or you're out. Then we'll see what you're going to do. And unfortunately, I feel, at that crossroads, I tell people you got to be ready for leadership before you have money or power, because money and power will turn you, again, as I said earlier, inside out. It will reveal who you are. And if you don't know how you're going to handle power, once you get it, even if somebody beats you with the whip, one day, if you haven't determined what you're going to do with the whip, you're going to hold it in your hands and you're going to say, well, maybe I'll just use it once, because this is a really special occasion. This is a really special need. And you get results. And then you use the whip again. And then you use it again. And before you know it, you're whipping people as much as the people you complained about who were whipping you. And so it's never been a greater need for leadership, but I'm concerned that when the rubber meets the road, we're not really ready because our values, our leadership philosophy, our purpose, they're all not in place, and consequently, we can easily get off track.
Oh, man, there's so much I can take from that. I think about something I've heard Darren Hardy and Jim Rohn both say, and, of course, Jim being Darren's mentor, always talk about that income very rarely exceeds personal development out of that one of those last stories you were telling. And when you talked about the whole with the leadership and the money and everything, that just made me think about hearing that statement from Darren and Jim, that if your personal development isn't up to a certain level, the money, you might eventually lose it. Like Jim also made a comment, like if you win the lottery, you better learn how to become a millionaire if you want to keep the money.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that type of, if your personal development isn't on that level, you're going to blow it. And then you talk about companies who say they want leadership, but in actuality, just do something completely different. So I agree with you there. A few more questions before we wrap this up. Earlier, you had talked about how you had started Urban Press. What's behind that venture, and how's that going so far?
Well, it's going really well. I'm surprised. I mean, it's really a service to help people self-publish. I mean, there are 1 million new titles a year, Kelly, and about 3/4 of them are self-published. We're trying to help people to have projects that won't look like they're self-published. I mean, sometimes you could look at a book and, my cousin does graphic design, and you look at it and you say, oh my goodness, who designed that? So, and you go inside and there are no margins and there's all kinds of misspelled stuff. But, my journey over the last 40 years, and it's been a joyful one, has been in the city, and then expanded to Africa. So, I've had a passion for reconciliation, and next Saturday I'm going on a Retracing the Steps of Civil Rights tour down south, because I've had an opportunity. I teach a lot of African Americans at Geneva College, and so Urban Press is something I've heard so many fascinating stories, most of them oral, of first African American librarian and first African American LPN, and they're disappearing. I mean, they're of the age that they're dying off every day. So if God will help me and us, we want to help tell some of those stories, but not just those stories. Go beyond that to the creative concepts, the poetry, the novels, the insights, nonfiction that urban residents can produce. Want to help them. I want to do it in a low-cost way, and at the same time help them raise money for some of their projects. And because I'll get a little theological here in a moment, but I just am concerned. That part of the leadership malaise is the church's malaise, and I think very often we've settled for good church being the goal of what it is that we want. So we go to a 2-hour service, and we want there to be 4 hours of church in it, and we want it to be dynamic and great music, and then we want to go back to work at the post office or the insurance company until next week. And I just think there's more to it than that, and that's where purpose and creativity comes in. And so Urban Press is a means by which we are trying to give people a vision for how they can produce some things, as I mentioned earlier, to have the joy of holding a creative project in your hand that one day was only a figment of your imagination, but now has become a reality. And I found it to be addictive, that once you do it, if you can get past the fear of success, can I do it again? Can I handle this? Is it drawing too much attention to me? Is this God's will? If we can get through all that, then we'll do it again and again, and it sets people hopefully on a life pattern of productivity and creativity. So, in some small way, I hope Urban Press can contribute to that.
So true, and continued success in that venture, and God in that as well.
Thank you.
One thing I read in your bio: 41 years of marriage.
Yeah.
You look at, and they say the statistics today's divorce rate. What's your biggest piece of advice for people to get married and have that 41 years of marriage. I always say that. I always think of a movie that talks about. I remember the guy saying, "I want that forever love that my grandparents had," and that's the one thing that the old. I'm not calling you old. I'm just saying the older generation has that longer lasting marriages compared to what's happening in today's society.
Well, if you ask my wife how we made it, she would say, "Well, he's never here, so God has made a way," because we've been married 41, but he's probably only been home 22. Certainly without the Lord, if I can just bring my faith in, I think marriage is almost impossible for two Christians. I think you need an arbiter, and sometimes that is the will of God, because a forever love has to change and has to adapt to the two individuals as they grow and change. I'm not the same person my wife married, and she's not the same woman. We have different interests. Some things we used to love to do, we don't. Some things that used to bother us don't bother us anymore. And so we're constantly having to give one another space to grow as individuals. For me, purpose was a big part of it. I could not just insist that my wife help me with my purpose. I had to help her with hers. And so for me, that was travel, Africa. For her, that was the children. That was helping her establish her own jewelry artistry company, and I jokingly say to her, being her benefactor while she did that. And so, she's a wonderful woman. I would say most of the burden of adjustment and change has been on her because of the nature of what I have done. And where I have gone and what I have felt I needed to do. So, but without the Lord, it would have, I know we would not have maintained. God gives grace, and forgiveness has to be a big part of that, not keeping records, not you're always like that or you always say, and so then when you're dealing with a current problem, you are amplifying it by bringing history in. And 41 years, excuse me, there's a lot of history. So there could be a lot of, I remember when we were married 8 years, you did this, and 12 years, you said that. And when the kids were 6, you just can't go there.
Right.
You just can't go there. You got to deal with every day, today, and not ignoring the past, but at the same time walking a lot of forgiveness and a lot of grace. And my wife has done that magnificently, and I'm grateful, and I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for her.
All right. As we can get ready to conclude here, I always like to ask who I'm interviewing, what book are you currently reading outside of your own, or CD are you listening to, or maybe YouTube video you're watching that's giving you inspiration?
Yeah, I just listened to the compilation of Dr. Martin Luther King's landmark speeches in preparation for the tour I'm taking. Starting next Saturday as we're recording now. And so that I just finished with the Memphis speech the night before he was killed. I just finished that yesterday. I'm just preparing for my trip to Oklahoma City tomorrow, and just started reading Henry Cloud's Never Go Back. I'm a big fan of Dr. Henry Cloud. Also have a book on strategy that I'm reading. I'm teaching for the first time in October a leadership and strategy class at the master's level, and so I like to start early on. I like to teach new classes that I've never taught. It forces me to go out of my comfort zone of topics that I would choose to teach. I would not have chosen strategy. This is a high-level course. They're almost done with the program, so I've got to be able to bring it. I can't snow them like I did the first class. They're all intimidated now. They're almost done, and they're putting it all together. And so those are the ones that I'm reading and looking at right now.
All right. And lastly, what pieces of advice would you like to offer to people, and how do people get in contact with you if they want to connect with you and have you help them find their purpose?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. PurposeQuest.com is my website, PurposeQuest.com, and everything I've written, everything I stand for is on there. John Stanko at Gmail is the best way to get in touch with me. I do coach people. I do seminars, workshops, business consulting. Do a lot of team building because helping teams recognize the individual strengths that they have and how they can function better together. My advice would be grow in your self-awareness. Pay attention to what's going on in your heart, and don't be too ready to dismiss it just because it doesn't make rational sense. I think much of what we've talked about, the purpose quest, creativity, is paying attention. Why am I so excited? Why did I just miss lunch doing what I'm doing? Why do I keep putting this off? Why am I so bored? If we can be more in tune with our entire being and the messages that it is trying to send to us, that's how God structured us. And so I think God is speaking to us in a manner of speaking as we pay attention to what is going on in our hearts and in our lives at the moment. So pay attention. You don't have to understand what it means. You just have to acknowledge, I'm bored. I'm scared. I'm tired. I'm exhilarated, and I think once you do that, the path is like breadcrumbs we used to see in the cartoons. You pick up that breadcrumb and you eat it, and there'll be another one in front of you. You'll put one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, you'll be old like me, and down the road you'll be doing what it is that you want to do.
Dr. Stanko, I've enjoyed our time together. I feel when people listen to this, they'll be filled immensely and learn a lot about it, and hopefully they'll contact you so they can help find their purpose in life. I want to thank you for your time, safe travels, and continued success in all you do.
All right, Kelly, thanks so much, and thanks to all your listeners for tuning in today.
Thank you, sir, and I'll be in touch with the follow-up about this.
All righty, take care.
You take care as well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Journey to Success Radio. If you or anyone you know would like to be interviewed for the show, email Tom at tom2tall.com for details.